Hello. I like this bang. It's a banger. I like this track. It's very I like this bang. Well done. Starting off with a bang here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me make sure. Is my no? It's not. My chat isn't working. There we go. Chat's fixed. The cool stuff that we miss. Nothing yet. Okay, very good. So, in a second I'm gonna turn the music down or off or see. But this is gonna be a less coordinated, structured stream than we're used to. Let's turn this off now. Then the next music shall be Adhesive Wombat, which is the artist I always use for these streams. Symphony of a Forgotten Sprite. I like it. That's good. We are, as a as the accessibility requiring community, a forgotten sprite. I actually wrote an article about that a while back on my. Was it on my web? I think it's on my website or it's on the Free Code Camp publication. I forget, but it's like about the ghosts of accessibility, where essentially people keep forgetting we exist. Oh, hi, Crescent says, hello. Hello. Welcome in. I do believe we have some camera issues. Do we have camera issues? There we go. They're just setting up here. I'm a little late in the setting up department. Things appear to have gone a little bit wonky, because I had like a bunch of different things to do. A couple things that I'm actually going to be covering today, because I was struggling with a few things that took longer than they needed to for various interesting reasons. But yeah, I need to sort out a couple of things here. Looks like we might be having some tricky bits going on here. Let me just see. And do my usual pre-stream checks. I'll do them during the stream, which is good. I'll talk while I do them, so if anything is broken at the moment, I'll sort them out as we go. Basically, the idea of the stream came to me a couple of hours ago, so it's very much something we'll see how it goes. I also got some really cool stuff happening with the Gamer Jam stuff. Yesterday, we did some of that last Saturday on the UserCX channel, and we also did some of it on Wednesday last week. And it turns out there's a Discord where all the developers for these games hang out, so I sort of made myself known there yesterday, an hour ago. And we might get some devs in the chat tomorrow. It'd be really cool if that were to happen. We'll have to see. But yeah. Okay, yeah, I can definitely see that the webcam is not currently working. Let's see if we can sort that out. The AI is telling me that it's... Very interesting. Oh, wow. There we go. The way the webcams work, I think I was just talking to you for a bit there where you couldn't actually hear me. Let's see, did that sort it out? Yeah, I can now... the face is not very clearly visible, my AI says. Let's move this down a tiny bit. And where is the thing? It's a bit too far off to the left. So let's move that off to the right a tiny bit. And twist it the right way. There you go. That should be better. If it doesn't keep fucking up there. There we go. That should be good. In any case, we have cam. Yay. Any cow. This is one of those interesting things that I want to discuss today, actually. The way I just solved that for myself, because what I'm seeing a lot in people who want to start streaming, they don't really know what they can do, like, to make things like what I just had happen not happen. Wait, am I still not? Okay, it's pointing down too much. There. See if we can get my face a little better. It keeps angling off to the left. Hang on just a second here. This is getting a little bit annoying now. There. Yeah, it is. It is doing that. I'm not really sure why. I'm trying to fix it now. Did I just break my tripod? Hang on. Let me see if I can tighten this up a tiny bit. Ah, that's much better. Okay. Normally I have a thing going that sort of AIifies this a little bit better, so you get a better frame of me, but that seems to be on the fritz. This looks okay, I think. But yeah, one thing I want to talk about today. Let me move it back a tiny bit so there's more of me visible. There, that should be doable. Yeah, pitch up a little. We can do that. And it's still doing the thing. See that? The cable is still sort of trying to go off to the left a tiny bit. There you go. But yeah, basically, what I'm doing right now is I'm using an AI tool to basically describe the preview window of... Yeah, you can see my headphones, you can see and holding some, you can't really see my keyboard anymore, but that's fine. We don't really need to see the keyboard today. Basically, I need a better camera setup is what this is really telling me. Maybe just a way to get the entire room in focus. I'm not sure how that would work, but it would also be helpful if I ever do more music streams where like the keyboard is all the way over there. I do need to make this room more Twitch friendly currently though, because there's a fuck ton of crap on the floor. Oh, I cursed. Oh no. Basically, what I want to go about today is basically talking about accessibility and what that really is, like, for a lot of different people. Because accessibility is this huge term that we constantly bandy about. You know, things need to be accessible. Things need to be ADA compliant. Things need to be Section 508 compliant. Things need to be lawsuit proof so we don't get, you know, really angry people in wheelchairs suing us for a bunch of money. And really, accessibility is such a huge, like, large concept that it's very difficult to really say much that covers literally everything to do with accessibility. It's like talking about language when you're really trying to talk about Swahili. Like, yes, I can make blanket talk. I can talk about subjects. I can talk about direct objects and verbs and adjectives and all sorts of other things. But it's not really. I can't really, talk about things that are specifically Swahili related in that way. And I think that's one of the main issues that we're currently having with accessibility is that accessibility has become a bit of a buzzword, has become a bit of a business term where, like, we need to have accessibility. We need to be accessible, but no one really explains what that means, where you start doing that, like what accessibility is in the given context of any organization. And that's kind of where I want to start. I want to jump in here and draw a few parallels, because accessibility can be influenced by a metric crap ton of things. There's a lot of things going into it, and there's also a lot of things sort of ancillary to it that don't necessarily have accessibility roots but do enter into it. For example, what degree of familiarity do we expect from people to have with their assistive technology to consider something accessible? There's a lot of wiggle room there as well. Like, if I have an application that I need to do all sorts of hoop jumping through in order to get my work done, it's usable for me in particular. Is it accessible for me? I mean, I can access it. And I have the ability to do that, but it's not accessible in the sense that most people would call accessible. So in that sense, we now have this big term that is legally defined as being a certain thing, and we've made it a bit of a depends on the person kind of situation. And that's good in a sense, because it does depend on the person. It depends on, who you ask if something is accessible. If I play a video game and they have a huge amount of accessibility features, like, you can remap your controllers, you can get a high contrast theme, you can hold instead of tap buttons for people who have mobility impairments, there's audio description, there's menu narration, there is all sorts of things happening for accessibility. Is the game playable for me as a blind person? No, probably not. And that is because accessibility for me means something completely different to, excuse me, scratching my back, to accessibility, from Johnny down the block who's deaf. Like, in that sense, I don't need captions. I don't need captions to know what people are saying in games, but I do need some kind of way to know where I'm supposed to go, and that is not something that Johnny down the block needs necessarily. I mean, that's one of those gameplay features that anyone might honestly like, even if you're a casual gamer and you just don't have time to walk around aimlessly for hours figuring out where you're supposed to go next. That's why we got quest indicators on maps and arrows that tell you, go there, you moron, this is where you're supposed to be going. And, we stepped away from finding, random slightly older men-looking sprite in JRPG screen to figure out that that's the particular one out of the 15 that's in this house to go to the next objective. That's still cool. I mean, I like that kind of game, but not everyone does. Not everyone has time for it. So is that accessibility? I mean, up to a point. For cognitive, I guess you could say that's accessibility. It makes the game more accessible in a non-disability sense, because that's also a thing. Accessibility can also mean, like, approachability or, like, consumability, I guess, from a certain amount of, like, certain point of view. Like, accessible in games usually means it's not very hard. It doesn't take a lot of learning. While the accessible in games that I tend to cover on the other channel, the Xerxiax channel, is accessibility in the sense that I can literally not play this game unless I use these particular features that have been built in for people like myself who otherwise are not able to access the content within the game. A great example of that, yesterday I played, I was a teenage exocolonist. It's this sort of charming watercolor paint looking visual novel meets roguelike card game meets a couple of other things, prestige based roguelike with a little bit of running around as well. And the game is not accessible. You can't play it as a blind person because there's no text to speech for the text. There is no menu narration for the options. There is definitely no help for the map, and that's where I got stuck, because I was actually using a screen reader feature called OCR, optical character recognition, and through that and mouse emulation, which are both considered somewhat advanced technical concepts that a lot of people sort of shy away from. They don't really want to learn it. I was able to play the intro sequence. I was able to pick my name. I was able to pick my pronouns. I was able to pick various choices that influence the skills within the game. But then at some point, the option, like the way you're supposed to move, is you click on the map and then you move there. And then at some point, you can talk to people that are on that same area. And while I've since figured out that I think there's controller options of a controller inputs for doing something like that, which might make that accessible or at least doable, you still have no concept as a blind person of the map, so you don't know where you're meant to be going, where things are. And if the interaction windows are very small and you don't get a cue when you're able to interact with something by, say, pressing the interact button, the game is now not accessible enough for most people to bother with. Like, again, it depends on the person. Some people really like just running around games they technically, like, according to a bunch of other people, could not play, and just hammer the interact button and see what they can make happen for a couple of hours. That is a type of gamer. Heck, I was a kid and I played games that I could not possibly play just because I had fun with them. I've lost that over the years. I guess I just don't have the time now, but I used to play games like that, and it's a thing. It's a type of, do you enjoy playing that kind of game? And if you do, then could we argue it's accessible for you? I don't necessarily say that that word fits in that context, but it does, it does mean that someone is getting fun from a game-like experience, which ultimately I think is the point. So in that sense, accessibility is very sort of intangible. It's hard to really pin down, and I kind of want to go over that today. Again, I'm sort of making this up as I'm going along, and I don't have like a script or an outline or demos planned that we're going to do as we go. Questions are definitely recommended in that sense, that I can specify this to people that actually want to have certain experiences, want to know about certain things. That's no problem at all. I actually do have a couple things that I can do, and I will do, show off. Because accessibility is a hotly contested topic, even within disability communities. Like, what I see a lot is accessibility being conflated with technical proficiency. So that's the concept of it's accessible if you just know how to do XYZ. That's the one thing I want to sort of show off first and foremost. And actually, a really great example I found today of doing that is PowerPoint, of all things. Like, I was playing with a PowerPoint because I have a presentation I need to do in San Francisco in May. As people may have heard, I need to go to the RSA Conference 2025 to give a cybersecurity presentation there, and I had to make like a draft presentation for it. Now, obviously, I am fully blind. I don't know how to presentation. I don't ever when I give talks, I usually just do demos and I talk, kind of like how I do my streams. Definitely understand that having the visual is a good idea. I just generally don't bother with actual slides, but I just do stuff on the internet, which we are about to go do. Don't worry, this is not just going to be a black screen all the entire time. But that's what I tend to do. So I had to make a couple of slides, like a couple of mandatory slides that I had to put in there, and I had to put them together. And I realized just how little I know about PowerPoint and how it works. And there's a couple of really subtle and insidious accessibility issues that I found, at least with the template that I was playing with. Now, I don't get to show you my slides for obvious reasons, but I think I get you to show you the template I was working with. I don't think that can really harm anything. So I'm going to do that by just making an empty presentation and then having the template. And then we're going to just look at a few slides and how it works, because it's a really great way to illustrate a point I want to make. So let me grab PowerPoint. I really didn't think I would ever show PowerPoint on my stream, but you know, there's a first time for everything. Microsoft, take notes. I don't think this is gonna happen ever again, but hey. Let's close this out. We don't need this anymore. Oh, don't save that. Actually, I already submitted this, so you know, if it's bad, too bad. But let me just really quickly open this this thing that we have. And then once I have it in a state where I can show stuff off, I will put it on the screen and we can look at a slide together. It's just going to be an empty slide, but I want to show something about what visually is happening and what the screen reader is doing. Yeah, no, we're not PowerPointing for long. We're just PowerPointing to show off a really interesting issue that I found with PowerPoint today. It's really insidious, and I was really sort of amused that that's how we're doing it. It's fancy. Let me delete a bunch of slides in this here. Just delete it all. Delete. Oh, I'm in the wrong thing. So in the meantime, of course, I have my screen reader going. I have my Braille going. That's stuff that you guys have a little bit more of a tricky bit to see right now. I just deleted a bunch of them. Okay, we just have the first slide. I want to make a new slide. That's another thing. Okay, let's actually start from here. Let me start from making the new slide. At this point, we only have a thank you thing in the thing. It's no problem whatsoever. But I'm going to put this on the screen. I'm going to look at PowerPoint for a brief second. Where is my... Oh, that's a big question. Does PowerPoint get captured by OBS? Okay, well, about to find out. Krugel-Gome. Let's see what Krugel-Gome has to say about PowerPoints. Where is PowerPoint? There it is. That's PowerPoint. No. Is that PowerPoint? Yeah, PowerPoint. PowerPNT.exe if you ever need to know the file name for whatever reason. Anyway, this is PowerPoint. And we need to go make a new slide. I'm going to delete this slide as well, actually. I can't delete all the slides. You have to have one in there. Okay, gotcha. So, oh no, we can delete everything. Okay, great. So I go to the ribbon with Alt. I'm going to, at this point, also send my speech through, because that's, I think, an important thing to have here. Here it comes. I will turn the speech up a tiny bit, and I will also slow the speech down. So, first thing, we're going to go to the ribbon with Alt.
Ribbon tab control expanded. Home.
Now the ribbon is a Frankenstein disaster of epic proportions. It should never happen. Should never have happened, and no one likes this thing, but that's what we're stuck with, so we'll use it. We'll tab around here until we find the new button.
Record, share, home group, cut unavailable, copy, split, but format, painter, office, clip, slides, grouping, layout unavailable, new slide, split button, collapse, alt, H, I1 of 4.
Okay, so we have a new slide button that says it's a split button. If you press enter or a space on this button, it's just going to insert a new slide. I have not yet figured out the sorcery required in order to make it do this.
More left click, a new slide menu.
I just did it with the mouse. I moved the mouse to the button and clicked it, and I got that little drop down that lets me pick a particular thing. I actually
20.
want the title page, so we're going to grab the title page.
Transit contents, slide contents, reuse slides, not checked. RSAC 2025 theme grouping 1 of 2.
Okay, the title page is gone. That's
content
fine.
Slide 2 not select, transition slide not selected 3 of 5.
I'm going to use a transition
Presentation.
slide. That shows me what I want to see anyway.
Slide 1, slide 2.
So this is a slide, just a transition slide with some colors on it, and it has a
center title placeholder shape.
Center title placeholder shape. That's how NVDA reads this particular box. And I did not know this, but these have placeholder text in them. You can see that visually, but NVDA doesn't tell you. It just says center title placeholder shape. And placeholder shape to me means you can use a box that sort of shows how big the thing that you're going to type in is supposed to be, and that is all that does. But placeholder is actually a bit of a well, it's an overloaded term here. Because if I were to actually OCR this particular shape, and we'll go into how this all works in a second, but let me just do it.
Recognizing transition slide I section title. Up to 2 lines. Up to 2 lines.
That
center
text,
title. No objects,
I
no
know
next,
of no
no
way
previous.
of getting that text, the title and an up to 2 lines bit that you can see visually. I know of no way to get that text any other way. So if you're just in a presentation, and you don't think to try that, you'll not know what these boxes have in them. You won't know what you're supposed to do with this box. And that was me for about an hour. I was fucking around with it. I cursed again. I was screwing around with this. I don't need to save this. Thank you. We're going to close PowerPoint now. That's all I wanted to show. Bye. But yeah, these placeholder texts are not accessible in the sense that you can't access them unless you know this really cool and screen reader trick that a lot of people sort of are scared of. Like, it's not scary in a it's going to break stuff. It's more of a scary as in this is a lot of new keys I need to learn and I don't know how it works. And way back when this first got released, it was a lot harder and I don't know and it's hard and please don't make me do this. That's sort of the that's sort of the
what is that, video game?
No, Tony, we're getting hacked.
Hey, thank you for hacking me.
Speech mode talk. Speech mode off.
I super appreciate the follow. I'm going to look at your name because I cannot pronounce that from just hearing it. You are 0day3301 or EOL. Depending on how elite you want to be. Welcome in. Thank you so much for hacking us today. I saw you watching In the Wings for a bit there. I hope the content's interesting. If you don't know what I'm doing, I'm a fully blind accessibility know-it-all, I guess. I do a bit of cybersecurity content. I do some coding. I do some music stuff. I do stuff like this where I explain accessibility. Today's an accessibility thing. So where was I? Oh yeah, this just sort of contrived example, to be fair. Like, if you don't ever use PowerPoint, you're not going to run into this. If you are a business person, you're going to run into this eventually because everyone wants slides, charts, and figures. Which, ugh, but okay, that's what they want. So if you don't know that you can do that, then you're gonna have a really bad time in the office. And a lot of people don't know that you can do this. And if you do know, they don't know how. And if they do know, can we bleep this out? Redo. Someone is raiding me and I forgot to change out the sound for Xerxes on that because I never thought that would actually happen. Thank you so much for the raid, 0D3301. I appreciate that super much, person. I don't know if you're a sir or madam or something in between. That's completely cool, but thank you for the raid. I appreciate that super much. Go check him out, 0 Day. Let me shout you out. What is it? / shout out for Twitch now? 0 Day 3301. I've actually not shouted out something on this channel before. And I don't think I have the Twitch guru set up for this. Does that work? Does that do anything? No, if it didn't work, sorry, I tried. Yeah, I super appreciate the raid. Thank you so much. Also, welcome to the community. 4 viewers that joined along with 0 Day here. Like I just said, I'm a fully blind person that does accessibility, coding, hacking, musicking, game reviewing and playing. That's on the other channel, the Xerxes channel. That is where I do gaming. All sorts of stuff happening. You said you're the absolute legend. Huge respect, streamer. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. But yeah, I was saying, like, this is gonna mess you up in the office. There's other places. Let's go back to gaming for a second. If you are a frequent user of Steam, which I'm sorry for you if that's you, but if you are a frequent user of Steam, for the longest time, Steam had a very similar problem in that if you knew how to use all the magic in your screen reader, you could use it just fine. And then every time a new game would come out that was blind accessible, and people put it on Steam because that's where most people go, so it's logical that you want to put your game there. A lot of people grabbed the pitchforks and the pitch and feathers and just sort of got really mad because Steam is not conventionally accessible. It's better now. It's still not great, but it's better now. And that was a whole thing. It just became a thing in at least the blind community for a long time. Steam just did not work well for screen reader users. And I think it's still not super for things like macOS and Linux, but it works okay-ish on Windows now. But yeah, again, if you know the tricks of the trade, if you know what to do, Steam is perfectly usable for like the majority of cases. If you don't know what to do, which is fair. That's a completely fair mentality to have. You will not have a good time with Steam because Steam is not conventionally very accessible. There's a lot of things that just outright don't work that probably should work. Like you cannot really tab to a lot of places. You can't. A lot of things don't have proper conventional roles, so you can't look for buttons or links or things a lot of the time. You don't always know if a checkbox is on or off because that is not communicated to screen readers. So there's a lot of things that Steam could do better. Does that mean it's unusable? No, not necessarily if you know the tricks. But if you don't know the tricks, are you expected to learn the tricks? That's really the question I think that I want to talk about a lot today. Like, is it fair? Is it fair for users to need to know like a handful of somewhat considered advanced things in their screen reader, in their switch access controls, in their eye gaze software to be able to do certain things that otherwise wouldn't work? Like, is it fair to expect more than just a point and click experience that other people get? Is that a disability tax of effort or of energy, of spoons that you have on a given day to mess with things? I think it's not. I think it's not fair to expect that particular level of expertise. I think it's it's realistic to have that expertise at this point, because if you don't, then you're going to get behind. And unfortunately, that will mean that people are going to laugh at you for not knowing things. It's very similar to how like older people can't keep up and just still grumbling about their Nokia phones. Heck, I still grumble about Nokia phones. I miss my Nokia phone, okay? Nokia phones are cool. They dropped the ball on touchscreen phones, but Nokia phones were the shit. I loved my N82, okay? But it absolutely is true that that there is a certain level of added technical sort of mastery required to get certain things to work, even if you're just beginning in a field. And that's really where I started this channel from. Try Hack Me and Hack the Box and things like that. Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, various hacking tools and virtual machines and what have you. All that stuff is something you at some point start with. You don't know anything yet. You don't know how to do certain things yet. You're not, a Linux guru going in, and that's fine. That's how a lot of people are served. And unfortunately, a lot of these tools, Try Hack Me, leading the pack, unfortunately, is just not very, beginner friendly for these people, which is really sour and sort of painful for them because they really pride themselves on being beginner friendly. And like being just you can just pick this up and play. It's in your browser, nothing to install. Just, open a room and start learning. And that's true for the majority of people. But if you're blind, or if you have a hard time reading small letters or a small font, or if your, internet may not be the greatest, or a number of other reasons why you just might not want to use their inbuilt browser virtual machine, you're gonna get stuck really fast if you don't know, a handful of tricks to work around the issues that, the interface sort of gives you. And the ironic thing about that is that you learn those tricks on Try Hack Me, at least some of them you do. So is that fair? Like, is that fair to give people like who already have, arguably a leg up, need a leg up for like, things just take longer sometimes. Things take longer to learn, things take longer to realize. Is it fair to expect a higher degree of technical mastery from these people to even get a foot in the door? I don't necessarily think it is. I think that's what it often comes down to. If you're not willing to put in the extra work to get, whatever is not working for you, then you're essentially going to get behind. And that is just the world, because, people aren't going to do it for us a lot of the time. I've been talking to Try Hack Me folks, for example, for like a couple of years now. I've been told a couple of times that someone was going to look into it, and it hasn't happened as of yet. So, yeah. That is another thing. Like, accessibility is something that people get really burned out on. I currently have 2 accessibility jobs. I work for 2 different companies doing essentially the same thing in 2 different continents. And it tires you out. Basically, what my job entails is reminding humans that we're making things for humans and not for computers. or that we're making things for all the humans and not just humans that are like you. That is not fun if you are a human that is not considered human. That is really not always a great experience. Me sitting here and preaching this is that I even need to do that is very much a simplification, not even a simplification. It's like a sign of just how, well, I guess dehumanizing this experience can get. Like, I am here telling people that there's other viewpoints in the world than the people that are currently watching. And the fact that I need to do that, and it's not just obvious, is itself sort of a great pointer that's happening. And it's sad. It's super sad. It's not great. I don't think I've ever had this many viewers. Oh my god, I love it. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Let's look at a website that is conventionally relatively accessible, but still can trip some people up. freecodecamp.com. I've been here before in a previous stream, and I'm going to do it again because it's a great example of what I think is currently the level of accessibility that is expected on, let's say, an average website. I'm going to put Chrome on the screen real quick so we have something to look at. It's not just going to be, like I said, black screen central the entire time. Here you are. Free Code Camp has been doing some pretty cool stuff as of late. They have like making a bunch of new curriculums, a bunch of new stuff, stuff in beta. It's all very nice, but
speech mode.
I still see a lot of people asking in like blindness communities. Those are the communities I have access to. Let's be fair here. I'm speaking for blind people because that's what I know. Okay, there is obviously a bunch of different disabilities that have very different needs, very different requirements that I quite honestly don't have the authority to speak for. I don't know what a person with dyslexia needs. Like, I know what people say they need, but I have not spoken to a dyslexic person, let alone a group of them, to ask them, what do you actually need? Like, do the fonts help you? Do the reading softwares that like say words as you move your mouse help you? I don't know if they do. I think they do. I think they've been proven to do that, but I don't know to what degree, and I therefore do not want to speak for them because I'm not dyslexic. I don't have that problem. I don't even call it. I don't have that deviation from what a lot of people consider the norm. So I cannot really talk about that. Same for contrast. I know about contrast ratios the way any accessibility auditor would know about contrast ratios. Like you test them in a tool, and if the number is too low, then it's bad. But I cannot imagine what that experience is like because I don't even know what a color is. So I cannot imagine like what two different colors that are not far apart enough would look like to a person that needs contrast. And therefore, I'm not going to really discuss it. If it comes up, I will. I'll bring it up. I'll say what I know, but I'm not going to be representative and say this is what people with mobility issues need. I don't know. Ask them. I think that's a really good shift that I'd like to see in accessibility in the coming time. What I'm seeing way too little of still in 2025 is just ask the people you're trying to help. Like, not just blind people, not just people with a screen reader. Ask people, with mobility issues. Ask people with contrast issues. Ask people who you want to use your product what they need you to do in order to make the product easier for them to use. And you're going to get different experiences, different needs, and different requirements, even from two different blind people. I really like heading levels. Some people really hate heading levels. It's a thing. Like, people have different requirements. And there's something to be said about maintainability and how much you can go down all those rabbit holes and do all the things. But I think, it's just like any other feature request. If enough people ask for it, it's probably something that people are going to use or at least want to try to use. And that should really be enough of a, cry for help to do certain things. And particularly if it's that or, putting in more ads or putting in AI or putting in, a fancy spinning carousel that no one actually looks at but looks fancy for designers. I'm sorry, but if you go for the carousel, you have your priorities wrong. I'm sorry. And I'm not even talking about the developers here. I'm talking about the managers. I'm talking about the product owners here. Like, yes, it might up your bottom line. No, no one is going to actually want this experience. Just stop. Think about your actual. That's the thing. Think about your actual users for once, not the people who are going to pay you money.
Speech mode off.
And yes, of course,
Speech mode talk.
capitalism is a thing. You need to make money with your business, or your business isn't cool. That's fair, but you're still making it for humans. You're still making it for people to actually use. So if you have a garbage app that looks like just terrible, and there's like 15 million slot machine things going on in the background, but you're just trying to hit one button, and then someone comes at you and says, hey, this UI is a little distracting for me. Can you maybe not have the entire screen do like the polka in front of me while I'm trying to press a close button? Then that is probably something you should take more seriously than, Billy Joe that says, hey, you need to add more ads to this because it's not making enough money. Sorry, capitalism is not the answer to everything. I'm sorry. I guess I'm preaching to the choir here, but it just isn't.
Primary navigation landmark.
Okay, we are on Free Code Camp is a great example. Free Code Camp is free. Like, if Free Code Camp does things that break accessibility because because they have a stupid idea, I can tell them, hey, this is dumb. It's not accessible anymore. And I have a relatively high chance it'll get fixed. Relatively being very much with asterisks around it because, well, it's still people who have other priorities. Unfortunately, we are not very high on the priority list usually. And yeah, that's again the dehumanizing facts of life, where I am a accessibility representative for a company of thousands, and I'm like one of the 2 people that does that. So
submit search.
It is that bad. I can't really make it any more colorful than it is. I did an article
Free Code Camp
a few years ago.
Speech mode off.
What it's like working for a sighted developer team as a blind developer. If you Google it, you'll find it. People actually asked me, "Can you make this less depressing? Like, can you make it end on a nice note?" And I'm like, "No, not really. It really is that bad." So yeah, it's great sometimes. It's fantastic. And that PowerPoint thing we showed earlier is a great example of that. Like, it looks like everything works. You can tab to things, like it reads something. It'll tell you that there's a text box placeholder shape there, but it doesn't tell you what the placeholder text is, so you don't know what to put in the shape. You can move it around. It'll tell you if you use the arrow keys. I didn't show this off. If you use the arrow keys, it'll tell you like how many inches from the right and from the top you are. It'll even tell you if something is behind another thing. I mean, it won't tell you that it's not a problem because the other thing is transparent, but it'll tell you that things are overlapping. It's really cool, but then, something basic like telling me what's in the placeholder text is not a thing you can do. And that could easily be a PowerPoint issue. Maybe it's not a PowerPoint issue. Maybe it's just the fact that was an image and it had text in it or something, but that's just this very close, very clearly that, people just were not consulted. People did not check with someone who actually uses a screen reader before this was shipped. And I don't know how long this has been in there, maybe years, maybe decades. I really don't use PowerPoint, but it's just yet another example. And I see this every day. I see this on GitHub, where a label for assets becomes a label that just says collapse or expand. I see this in Microsoft products. I see this on Apple.com. I see this on Amazon. This is on the biggest websites in the universe. And then, there's a very fair question when like a mom and pop shop that barely makes enough money to stay afloat comes up and says, but what about us? We don't have the resources. We don't know. And they are not doing it right. So how are we expected to? Which is fair. That's fair. If you can't follow the greats, then who are you supposed to follow? And accessibility documentation? I'm not sure if anyone's ever looked at it. It's extremely painfully dry. Like, needs lube to not give you rug burn dry. It's bad. It's really bad. And there's articles all over the web that make it better, like bits by bit, like someone writes a bit about this, someone writes a bit about this. It's not good. It's bad. And it's not accessible for that reason. It's not a very accessible read. It's nothing you take to bed and read before you go to sleep. It'll put you to sleep if you let it. But yeah, accessibility, ironically, is not super accessible to get into. You need to know a lot of stuff. And that's why I say, obviously, ask the people who, talk who consume these interfaces, who have the problems. And some companies do that. I mentioned GitHub earlier. They do send out surveys. They do, check with people. They test with people. They see where the problems are. I don't know what happens to the problems after. I don't know what priority they're being given. I don't have that information. But at least that information is being gathered, which is a lot more than some companies can say. Try hack me, looking at you. I've given them the feedback. It's not been acted on whatsoever. The reason I keep harping on them today is there is a new certification for Try Hack Me, the SAL1, the Security Analyst Level 1. And I was initially going to check it out, but I looked, and it's basically the the Security Operations Center simulation that we looked at a few weeks ago, which was very inaccessible. And then there is a logo in that sort of about text of, hey, we made a new certification. It's fantastic. You want its children. It's great. You should go do stuff to it. And then there's a logo that says, we made it in partnership with, and then there's a graphic of a logo that has no alt text. And I just decided, you know what, I'm done. If you can't even be like the bigger guy and put alt text on one logo in your about text for a new certification that you're so uber proud of that everyone needs to go get it, then what are you doing? Like, at this point, I understand that you can forget, but at this point the culture just isn't there. It's very clear. I mean, that's been clear to me for years, but I just don't feel like I need to go look at it. It's a fail. It's just not going to be good. But let's have a look at Free Code Camp. Now we're here. So
Free Code Camp curriculum.
So far, so good. We get things that are neatly labeled.
Change language collapsed.
There's a button that changes the language.
Menu collapsed.
And here's a slightly less labeled button. Menu. A menu for what? Like, this is a question I ask here on stream. What is this menu for? It just says menu. It tells me it's collapsed. The click that we hear means it's a button, so I can see that as well. But it has a terrible label. It's menu.
No objects inside. Sign in. Menu collapsed.
And it doesn't look like there is any other info to be had here. There's a couple things, if this happens, that you can do if you have the technical know-how. You can go OCR the thing like we did with PowerPoint. Maybe that'll give you a better text. Maybe the text visually is more interesting, if there even is any. Usually, and this is another thing you just know, usually there is not really even any text. This is usually just a hamburger icon. And it probably is here too. But if you don't know what this menu says, like say you're a new user, you're just not super computer literate, and you tab onto this and it'll just say menu, and you're like, what is the menu? Like, what menu is this? And these kinds of users exist. Like look at your parents who need you to fix your printer. They don't read. They don't really know where all the things are instinctually. They just sort of see menu and have no idea what kind of menu we're looking at. Let's actually see what it is.
Expanded.
We have expanded the menu. The menu
list. Donate.
Has a donate.
Curriculum.
A curriculum.
Forum opens a new window.
A forum, which opens
news
a new
opens
window.
A new window.
Got news,
radio opens a new contribute opens a new window. Podcast opens a new window.
Okay, can we close this menu? Yes, we can by pressing escape. Very cool.
Sign in.
So really what this is a navigation. It's like a navigation hamburger menu, I guess, is what that does. But it took me 20 seconds to find this. I did not prepare Free Code Camp to bully today. That was not something I prepared. I just did that because I figured this would be a good example. And I was right. And I didn't even really think it would be quite this easy to find. But here you go. A menu that just calls menu. And you could argue it's just the menu of the website. But this kind of stuff matters. Like, a lot of people get confused by this. Particularly if there's multiple ones. Sometimes there's like multiple menus all called menu. Or like all called more actions or something like that. At that point, if you're going button by button, which I can do, let's go do that.
Skip.
Now at the top, I'm just going to hit B for the next button. That's an NVDA feature.
Primary navigation landmark, search landmark, submit search terms.
So you got to submit search
change language,
terms,
collapsed.
Change language,
menu, collapsed.
menu.
No next button.
And that's all the buttons on here. But if you listened carefully, if we go to the first button.
Primary navigation landmark, search landmark, submit search terms.
We have a search landmark within the primary navigation landmark. That is not how that usually goes. Search is usually its own thing. But this is already called the primary navigation landmark. So this is considered
Speech mode off.
the primary navigation. And I'm going on a tangent. Don't worry. I'm going to explain why this is important in a second. But then we have menu, which what this gives me the impression, and this is an accessibility thing that I think would only trip up people that are technically proficient. This button is collapsed by default, and usually when a button is collapsed by default within a navigation like this, that tells me my computer's screen is minimized, because that's usually what a mobile layout would do. So I am now being sent down a bit of a rabbit hole. It probably is fine. Like, it looks like we're maximized or fine, but that button being the way it is tells me, oh, mobile. And that may mean it's mobile first. It may mean that it thought that my computer was a mobile, or they just decided this is how we do our menu, and it's all fine. But there's so many questions and things that come into play when you look at a website like this. And if you're, technically not very proficient, that label is going to throw you off sometimes. Let's just keep going. See what else
Speech
is
mode
here.
top. Main landmark. Get started. It's free.
Get started. It's free. Now I'm going to
Get started.
at
It's
something.
speech mode off.
I'm gonna look at something. I'm gonna look at this. I want to look at this link in the inspector because I'm curious about something. Get started for free. Okay, so it's a span. I want to go in. Okay, it's an ad. So look at this. Look at this. I'm not sure how visible the inspector is on my screen. I'm going to narrate for the people who can't see it. This is a link. It's an anchor element, but it's not looking like a link. It looks like a button. It's a call to action button. It's a very large call to action button. So when you look at this visually, you see a button. This is a button. It looks like a button, quacks like a button, it walks like a button. It's a button. Except it's not a button. It's a link. And again, that is one of those distinctions that a lot of people argue about a lot. Like, should it be a link? Should it be a button? Does it matter? It doesn't in a lot of cases, but some people might be thrown off by this. If you can see, but you still use a screen reader, you're going to look for that button with the next button. If you do that, you're going to look for a button with your button, particularly on the Mac, where you might do like a rotor thing with all the buttons, and it's not going to be in here because this is not technically a button. This is a link that masquerades as a button. So again, this might trip up some users. They're looking for a button, they can't find the button, and some people who are, very impatient, more impatient than me, which says something because I can be very impatient, but someone who's very impatient might decide the button's not clickable, because that does happen. Sometimes you just cannot get to a button that is perfectly visible on the screen. It's right there, but it's been ARIA hidden or some other thing's been done to it that makes it not reachable with the tab key, or the screen readers don't see it, or there's another thing happening that makes the button unreachable. And this, again, it would be a very foregone, hastily drawn conclusion, but it will happen. Some people will think that. So is that a thing to fix? Is this something that makes the website inaccessible? To someone, I'm sure. But I wouldn't necessarily put this one at the top of the priority list unless it's easily fixable. You could put a roll equals button on this for screen readers. That wouldn't do anything to the visual markup. But it will screw with other experiences. If you're used to right-clicking this button and then doing open in new tab, that would work for this, because this is technically a link. You can do that. Button, that's not going to work anymore. So it's an interesting one. Like, you'd have to gather data. Like, how is this link being used? Are a lot of people right-clicking this and doing opening a new tab? Because if there are, then fixing this will probably piss off more users than it helps. And that's not good either. So in that sense, you need to sort of pick your battles and decide, okay, what's important, what's not important, based on, a couple of things. It's accessibility, it's usability, but it's also like your users in general. You can't just make them be very mad at you. That'd be bad, generally. Yeah, that's a lot of these things that I do in my daily work days. I go down rabbit holes with designers, with developers like this. I look into a button, decide if it needs to be a button or not. Sometimes I test out a new search to see if when you're typing it actually tells you, hey, new stuff is happening, you might want to know about that. It's another fun one. Like, can we find one that does that? I need a... Does Azure still do that, I wonder? I need a page that essentially talks to you as you're typing in the field, and it does it way too much. Any blind people in the audience that remember any of those that do that off the top of their heads? Because while I'm looking around here, I'm just seeing what else is here that might be cool to comment about. Accessibility is something you can overdo as well. Like, you can sort of accidentally abuse accessibility features to be too verbose, and that's another one of those in like one of those things that you need to sort of weigh in. When am I saying too much? Like, when am I supposed to tell the screen reader to just shut up for a second and do things? A lot of things I could show off that do that are things I'm signed into that have NDA-able stuff in them, so I can't really show. Like, Microsoft Teams does this a lot, for example. LinkedIn does this too up to a point, but I can't really show that either, I don't think. But yeah, a really great example of that, and I'm not sure if it still happens, but if you are on an iPhone and you start typing in Spotlight, every time you type a character, at least when I last used an iPhone for longer than 5 seconds, I'm not sure if this has been fixed since, but it would do this thing where it would tell you right away after you type the character how many results that character meant the search now contained. Like, if you typed an H, 15 results. You typed an A, 5 results, so forth. And it would do that a little bit too fast. So essentially you would have to wait until it stopped saying X results before you could type your next letter, because if you didn't know what you were typing. Screen readers can only say one thing at a time generally, so if you just keep telling me how many characters I have left every time I type a character, for me that's fine, because I'm a touch typer. I don't need to listen to what I'm typing. But if you need your screen reader to tell you what you're typing, and this is usually true for phone users, and I have a 500 character field, and every time I type it says 499 out of 500, 498 out of 500, 497 out of 900. I can't type because every time I'm trying to type, it's giving me these announcements that I don't want to hear about. And that is not very good. That makes it impossible to use certain things. VS Code, does VS Code not do that sometimes? Where I think it does sometimes, yeah. Again, this is very much off the cuff. I'm talking essentially just because I know all this stuff by heart. I don't need to really think about this too much. Amusingly, that's how I do talks. Me having to pre-create slides is actually very anathema to how I usually work. I don't do slides, I just do. And then if the slides need to happen, I'll make them after. But yeah, that's not what we can do today. Yeah, we've covered a bunch of stuff in a little bit of time. We've been talking for about an hour, and I'm honestly still surprised I still have stuff to talk about. But yeah, accessibility is, like we said, a blanket term. Accessibility means a lot to a lot of different people, and things like WCAG, things like the web accessibility, web content accessibility guidelines. Even that term is hard to say. Has a number of criteria that together summarize essentially a baseline. If you have all these things going for you, you're doing pretty well. You can still screw it up, but you're doing pretty well. Sometimes they sometimes they're very counterintuitive, sometimes they even contradict each other. But yeah, it can happen. What I was going to talk about regarding free code camp, let's see if we can just make it a quick account and see what's what. Because accessibility is so person dependent. I just thought of another example while I make an account. I'll just make a throwaway account super quick. But what is so interesting about accessibility is that it really depends. Like, it is very much conflated with technical ability, and I think that's not necessarily that far out of left field, because they do interrelate. If you are easily overwhelmed by what your computer is doing, by what your websites are doing, that is an accessibility concern that I think a lot of people will give way too little attention to. VS Code, for example. Let's switch to VS Code. I think it's a better demonstration of what I'm trying to show. Free Code Camp is good too, but we'll do VS Code for now. Just gonna make a new file real quick. We'll call it what do we call it?
Speech mode, speech, save, file name, combo
Call
box
it
filter.
users floaty ic null.js. Why
Chrome
JS?
legacy
Because
window,
it's built
unknown.
into VS Code, and I actually know like kind of how it works enough to show
Ignore
off what I
dot
want to show
unknown.
off. Oh dear.
Content.
VS
Desktop
Code
recognize
is
welcome
broken.
seed view go run terminal 9 help user launch screen reader spaces 4e x out of 10 03/4 unknown.
Let me
Visual Studio Code save alt don't cancel unknown.
Okay, something strange is happening.
Don't say unknown.
Sometimes this will happen.
Speech mode
Again,
off.
this is another video idea I've been playing with. I'm not sure if anyone would find that interesting, but the screen reader experience is very much not what you see is what you get. That's like another talk that I'm going to give on here at some point, because screen readers do so many different things differently than what you would expect from just a visual perspective that it can be very jarring. Okay, I got my file open. Perfect. Let me put that on the screen for a second. I hope it's not going to be too difficult with getting stuff on the screen. Oh, balls. Balls. Here. So this is where there's Visual Studio Code. There's not much to it.
Speech mode talk.
When you first start learning how to program, a lot of people will tell you use Visual Studio Code, and that is a fair assessment. It's a good editor. It'll last you for a very long time. Might even be the only editor you'll ever need. But
suggest list con constructor 1 of 92. Suggest list console 1 of 15.
if you're not used to editors doing this exact thing, it's going to be super weird. Like, it's going to be like, why is there suddenly a list? Why cannot I just type my prompt? I can't see my type, what I typed anymore. That's gone. Why is that gone? And you're going to like have all these things happening at you. Like the code's going to change. If I do console, I do a dot,
suggest list, log 1 of 21,
comes
error.
up and it says log. Oh no, there is an error that's happened. I press tab again.
Ignal.js has autocomplete multi-line console.log. Hello from ignal.js apostrophe. Inspect this in the accessible view, Alt plus F2.
And now an AI suggestion just came up, and if I don't listen to the AI suggestion, I just type a bracket.
Data any MDN reference https://developer.mozilla.org/docs/web/api/console/log static hint.
It's giving me a hint, and it's giving me a URL within the hint that I can supposedly click, but I don't think screen reader users get to click that, so that's essentially extraneous information. And what the screen reader didn't tell you is that there is a closing parentheses that's been added by the editor as you're typing. If you type a closing parentheses at this point, nothing will happen, it'll just replace it. But that's one key you did not necessarily have to type as a person with a screen reader. Now, imagine, I mean, I'm a programmer. I know how all this works. Like, I know what MDN is. I know that if I were to go to that link, it was just spouting at me. I can go to a thing that tells me what I'm supposed to put between the brackets. That makes sense to me, but I'm me. I've done this for a couple of years. Don't mean to brag, but I kind of know how this works by now. If you're new,
speech mode off,
and you just want to type your console log hello world, to just put something in the console and all this stuff comes at you, that's a lot. That is a lot of stuff. And for some people, that is difficult. That is, you know, a lot. Like, I can press control, I can shut it up, but I know that that's what that does. It's just like in PowerPoint. I was leaping around it just now because I jumped to the thumbnail view. I moved a couple of slides around. I deleted a couple of slides while you guys weren't looking because I had to get rid of all the evidence, as it were. And I know how to do that now. But I had to look up a bunch of hotkeys because it doesn't tell you how to do that. It tells you, like, you have item 1 of 5 selected, but it doesn't tell you how you can then, for example, make that be item 2 of 5. You have to intuit. You have to use the arrow keys to switch between slides. And you have to intuit that if you use control in the arrow keys, you move a slide around. You also have to intuit that you can only delete slides from the thumbnail view and not from the slide view, even though you can use the arrow keys the same way to move from slide to slide in that view. So there's just a lot of cognitive load there that you just sort of need to know how things work. And again, is that an accessibility issue or a you just don't know how to computer issue, pepcac issue, basically? And this is very similar. Like, if you know how to shut up the speech, you're basically fine. You just need to hit the control key a bit more often than you normally would. If you know how to braille and have the means, the financial means, the, I guess, state means to afford a braille display, and you can use it well, and you can read braille, you can have all these things, then you could even turn the speech off and not have that whole entire problem whatsoever. You can just look at braille and have that be a thing that you can look at. But does that make it more accessible? Like, again, the word accessible has become so incredibly, like, loaded that it's difficult to answer these questions. So when are you accessible enough? When is it accessible enough? When is it accessible and you can just call it quits? It never is. That is not a thing you can do. Accessibility is an ongoing process that is constantly in flux, just like security is, just like translation is. If you put new content, you don't translate it, it's not going to magically suddenly exist in another language. Someone needs to translate that. Someone needs to put in the work to, you know, write the things in the magic language that you don't speak, and it's going to have to be integrated into the product, and then it's translated, then it's done. But then the second you add more content, we're going to have the whole thing again. It doesn't end, and neither does accessibility. It keeps going. It's never done. And that's fine because you're making stuff for humans, not money. Money is a side thing. You're supposed to make the thing for humans because you like making things for humans. Isn't that why we did this? Didn't we make computers to make, like, stuff easier for humans in general? And then we just decided, hey, shit, we can make money on these things. And then the whole thing just went to absolute. But yeah. That's where we are now. We just forget that we're making this for people to consume, and we actually want these people to be happy. We don't want them to constantly be at the edge of so annoyed that they'll quit out of your app just to make a couple more bucks. And yes, it works, but boiling a frog supposedly also works, and I don't think we want to be doing that every single day either. So in that sense, is it really a winner if you know, if you exclude 1,000 people, but you get another 1,000 people so annoyed that they'll click your thing to, you know, give you $2 a piece in order to not have to see your vapid advertisements anymore? Is that really a win? You made money. Are you happy with yourself? That's really the question right now. It's when we're looking at, like, countries that are killing their accessibility programs left, right, and center because it's apparently not making money. I'm like, yeah, that was never the point of them. Like, and we just, as a species, I think we've sort of lost track of reality in some respects, and I get to be the, you know, front fighter of these kinds of decisions where I get to explain, yeah, I'm like 1 out of 2 people that work at this company that does accessibility. Sometimes things slip by me. In fact, a lot of times they don't even include me in these decisions, so sorry. And then I get to, you know, defend why I'm annoyed at some developer who put in a lot of work in order to make something that's really not accessible to a bunch of people and essentially calling their baby ugly. And then that developer is not happy with me, but grudgingly fixes it, and that's the cycle of accessibility. We don't want to be the accessibility police. That's not what we want to do. We want to teach. We want to make sure that people know how to do it well. But we don't get that chance a lot of the time. We have to be the police because by the time we get to it, it's too late. games are a great option, a great example of this. Again, I know I keep gravitating towards video games, but it's just a really easy example to sort of exemplify this. Yeah, did that. If you like your wordplay, there you go. Basically, the reason why that's so easy is because of the way video games are made. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening. A release happens. A patch happens, maybe, if you're lucky. And then the money is gone. Like, all the money's run out. No more capital, no more anything. And most gamers, most games at that point, that's it. The game is done. You might get the occasional DLC, you might get the occasional bug fix, but no more new major features generally, unless the game was so bad that they sort of have to patch it over. But a lot of the developers that work on a certain game have at that point already been shifted to other games. They're doing different projects because the company needs to make money. And the reason I bring that up is very simple. Accessibility usually comes after release. And that's a really bad thing, but that's what we're stuck with. Usually what happens is we'll release it for the majority, and then, if there's any money or sauce left, whatever, then we'll maybe, put some intern on making it more accessible, or translating it, or making it more secure. Because that doesn't make money. It's not the fancy schman's cool stuff to work on. It's boring. It's putting dots on the I and crossing your T's. And that's okay for websites. Like, for websites, it's not great either. It's very much if you're making a blueberry muffin and then you make the muffin and afterwards you decide, oh right, it was supposed to be blueberry, and you stuff a bunch of blueberries in there. It's technically a blueberry muffin, but blueberries are gonna come out the sides. There's a bunch of holes in there. Everything's gonna fall apart the minute you take a bite. It's not good. It's not going to work as well as if you just sat down, pre-baking, and decided, hey, you know what? Blueberry muffin probably needs blueberries, and you put them in then. That's really what accessibility should be for products, but it just isn't. That's never how it works. Heck, I've even seen blind-specific applications where that goes wrong. I've worked on an application that was supposed to help blind people watch, look at objects and images and things, and it would describe it to them, and it wasn't accessible. I'm just like, guys, how do these neurons fire? Like, how does this happen? But yeah, that's the problem. With games, you don't have that luxury. Websites, you generally put them on the web and then you maintain them. You don't really switch all your people to a different websites the minute it's done, because websites are generally considered dynamicer than games, and dynamicer is now a word, bite me. But games are still considered a bit more static. Like, sure, you'll have microaggression, microtransactions and DLC and things, so you can maybe squeeze a bit more money out of everyone, but the game is functionally done. And if you then decide, hey, accessibility, there's no resources, there's no team members, no one's working on this thing anymore, so you're essentially too late. I always see so many people hopeful when a game releases and it's, oh, maybe they'll add it later. No, they're not going to add it later because they're not going to work on it anymore. And if you put those things together, accessibility isn't taken into the design stage, but is added after the fact. And then also accessibility needs to be added by no longer existing resources and team members that have been doing other things now. Yeah, is it any wonder that it's never happening? Is it any wonder that so many games never get accessible, and other products, movies, websites, experiences, heck, even buildings? If this is constantly how we keep doing it, if this is the cycle of we'll do it later and then turns out later there's no one to actually do it later, then yeah, it's always going to go wrong. And that's why me and other people like myself give these kinds of talks, to put it into your head. No, you can't fix it later. No, you won't have a chance to sort it out when everything is done. This is part of your pre-release. Like, if it isn't, then it's not going to ever happen. And if you are ever in that indefensible position of having to fix something after, you've released it, I'm sorry for you. Like, I will be the person that will come at you and say, listen, this is bad, this is broken. I'm always nice in the sense that I will try to give you the lowest hanging fruit. I'll try to tell you with the least work possible, like how you can at least make it workable for people. But I will come at you and tell you it's broken, you're gonna need to fix it. And yeah, it might very well be that at that point you're just not given the leave by your manager, by your person, by your boss that says like, listen, we don't have time for the 0.01 of the 0.01% to also use our software because we need to make money and we don't care about excluding a bunch of people. But that's really what it is. They'll use different, they'll use different words. They'll use priority. They'll use target audiences. They'll use revenue, bottom line, all that stuff. But it's really, really just discriminating against people is cheaper than fixing this. Sorry. And yeah, again, is that fixable? Up to a point, yes. If you have the technical know-how, for example, just now, if I
speech mode talk,
if I make the speech happen again,
right, left,
left records,
data,
right here,
MDN, reference, HTTP.
I can shut that up. I can turn that off. If you don't know how to do that, then you're gonna have a bad time. And it's a stupid simple example. Pressing one button to make the speech not speak. That's a simple example. Some people don't even know how to do that much. Some people, when they go blind, here's a screen reader, here's 2 hours of training, good luck. And these people exist, and they have to learn it by themselves, and they will not always do that. So then when they come up to a website, and it does something like an ARIA Live notification that talks to the screen reader directly to indicate that something has happened somewhere else on the page, because the screen reader wouldn't have known about it otherwise. And this person complains that it's too chatty and he can't figure out what to do on the website because something keeps interrupting him. Is that really something we should blame the user for? Is it something that we should sort of just keep in mind as being what essentially what we're doing has become? That's just it now. We're doing that. I don't think there's really a clear winner. I don't think there's really someone that is always right in those debates. Like, sometimes I think it's fair to tell people, listen, you're going to need a little bit more knowledge of your screen reader before you tackle a website like this. Just like, again, your 75-year-old grandma who needs to do, I don't know, internet banking, and she just doesn't know how. At some point, there's two things that can happen. One, another person keeps doing it for her until she doesn't need to worry about it anymore. Let's put it that way. Or grandma sits down one day and just reads what it says on the screen and tries and see how far she gets. And at that point, if grandma tries and grandma gets stuck by following the exact instructions on the screen, I think we can all safely say that grandma's not at fault at that point. Like, grandma tried, grandma put in the effort, grandma did not have to do that for you, developer. Grandma's been here way longer than you and doesn't have time for your bullshit. And then when grandma tries and grandma doesn't get it, is it really grandma's fault? Or do you care more about design than user friendliness? Because, I don't know. If you look at things like dark patterns where, like, we put a button for yes in the place where normally we have a button for no, and people just muscle memory it without really looking at it, and then agree to have all their data being sent to some organ donor lab in Siberia or something. Is that really the user's fault for not reading at that point? Like, are we not just annoying the user into what we want at that point? Is that accessibility? I don't know. At that point, it becomes so vague. User experience, accessibility, usability, all these things, user-centered design, all these things sort of mesh together at certain levels. And then you just have to decide what fancy business term, because that's really what accessibility sometimes becomes, do we apply to this particular system? Like, I think, didn't the Nintendo Wii do that? Where, like, you have to type in your credit card with, like, your A button or whatever it is, the equivalent of the Wii, and then when you've done it all, they switch yes and no around. So, like, you press no when you wanted to play yes, and it's like yes and everywhere else in the UI, but for the credit card, it's no. Then you have to fill in your credit card until the entire time all over again. I think that was a Wii thing. Wii or GameCube that did that. I think it was Wii because it was the Wii Shop. Yeah, it was the Wii Shop, I'm pretty sure. So is that accessibility at that point? I don't know. You tell me. Is that accessibility? Is that usability? If a person that is blind does that, is that accessibility because they have to memorize where everything is? Because they can't read it because there's no screen reader? Like, these questions are difficult. Like, I'm not asking easy rhetorical questions here, and that is not my intention. I'm making people think. At least that's my intention. I'm making people think about these things. Like, you're not always going to win the fight by making things more accessible, but you're also not going to win the fight by not doing that. There is a nuance. There is always a shade of gray between those two camps, like there is between any two choices, really. And, well, it's a difficult question. Like, I did not have this talk with a goal in mind. Like, I'm not here to bring this all down to an easy digestible conclusion. That's not what this talk is for. I did this because I wanted people to think. Like, if you haven't ever thought about accessibility, I'm sorry if this is a bit of a negative Nancy version of like your introduction. We really are a friendly bunch, I promise. But accessibility is a lot more nuanced than just, grab the accessibility bottle and sprinkle a bunch of accessibility on it. Like, it is a very user-centric topic. It really depends on people. You need to talk to people, look what they do, look what they don't do, and then you build your user interfaces around what you found. You don't just decide arbitrarily what you think other people are going to do and go with that, because you're always going to be wrong doing that. And yes, some people can work around it. Myself, I have a bunch of technical knowledge that I can use to dodge around some of the things people can do. By using OCR to check what a PowerPoint thing says, for example, by pressing Control to shut up speech, and all the way up to Try Hack Me, where if you know the right commands to put in the right places at the right times, you can then hack a hacking challenge into making it a little bit more accessible, because it allows you to use your own tools rather than Try Hack Me's, which I love for the paradoxicity of it. Like, I'm learning hacking, and I have to hack before I can properly hack. Amusingly, and this is, I think, my final point. I don't think it's going to be like a 2-hour stream today. I think we're going to ramp off soon here. But what I love to compare this to is the Dutch integration system. So I'm Dutch, obviously. That's my native language. And this might be a bit of a dangerous topic given how right-wing the world is now. But when foreigners come to the Netherlands, the learning of the Dutch language has essentially been privatized. So you go into the Netherlands, a hopeful foreigner from Gibraltar, I don't know, from somewhere, from Madagascar, someone from Madagascar. He likes to move it. He moved to the Netherlands, whatever. Madagascar, he moved to the Netherlands. I like to move it. If that's stuck in your head now, you're very welcome. And you need to learn the language. And in the Netherlands, you're kind of lucky in the sense that most people speak English, but the further away you get from Amsterdam, the lesser people speak English. And this becomes an accessibility issue in a really interesting way, because what happens is, if you want to learn the language, you can get some money off the government to do that. Like, you can get X euros from the government to learn the language. I think you could, at least. I'm not sure if that's still a thing, but you could. And the way that works is you have to fill in a very complicated form in Dutch. Both your responses have to be Dutch, and the form is in Dutch. It's a paper form, so you can't Google Translate it easily. Has to be submitted in written form, so if you're blind, fuck you. And then you ship that to some government postal box address, and at some point, possibly, if you have a Dutch bank account, which you also need to speak Dutch for, you'll get that money that you can use to go learn Dutch. So at that point, you've already had to do several things in Dutch to learn Dutch. And then you have to find a company in the maze, like the forest of tiny little, 10-man companies that promise you to learn Dutch for, usually just below or just over the government amount of money that you get. And you have to pick the one company, very scammy looking websites with obviously bot reviews and a bunch of things to learn Dutch. All in Dutch, of course. We're still all in Dutch. You have to find something in Dutch to learn Dutch, and then you find one, and if it's a scam, or if it's a bad company, you can't learn from them. Too bad. You should have learned more Dutch before you learn Dutch, and that is a really great analogy of, I think, how accessibility can sometimes be. Like, yes, accessibility is difficult to implement sometimes. But what we're doing now a lot of the time as developers, as people who create content, is we just put the accessibility burden on the person that needs the accessibility, as opposed to being preemptive and trying to talk to people before we start doing things, and then maybe implementing things that can actually help them. And it's that whole you need to be technical in order to get more technical thing all over again. Same with Dutch. Like, you need to be a computer whiz to learn how to be a bigger computer whiz. You need to be a math whiz in order to, make mathematics accessible enough for you to learn mathematics. And this is true for school subjects. This is true for like tech in general. This is true for a lot of different things. And I don't think that's fair. I think that's a really shitty place to be in for a lot of people. Heck, I was in there. I essentially had to teach my teachers how to teach me computer science when I was doing that in college. I was teaching the class on web accessibility in my own degree. Like, it is that bad, and it's not getting better. People ask me, is it getting better? Not really. No, it's still bad. And it's not all bad. Like, let's try to end on a high note. Let's see if we can make it a little bit more yay happy. I mean, it's not all bad. Like, VS Code, actually, I just showed it off, is something that is honestly quite miraculous if you look at it from the lens of a, say, 10, 15 years ago person. That's, when I learned how to code. We didn't have a lot of the things that sort of take for granted now, like code, like the suggestions we saw just now, that didn't work. Error indication on the line, that didn't work. Just plugins that plug into the editor to make you do different things. A lot of the times that didn't work either. So, well, what happened a lot back in my day, get off my lawn, you motherfuckers. Back in my day, what happened a lot was I would start, work somewhere. I would be at a developer shop somewhere. They would do like C# or JavaScript or whatever. And I would use completely different tools to my colleagues because, well, they could use whatever they wanted, and they had made their choice, and it was not the accessible option. So there was always this translation between like what I was using and what they were using when we had to pair program, which I had to do a lot. So that's just one of those extra things that, as an accessibility reliant person, you need to sort of just do outside of office hours, like figure out all that in between. You have to learn how things work, because no one's going to be able to tell you, because no one uses what you're using. Gonna have to learn if something doesn't work. You have to figure it out in work time or even outside of work time, as you're also expected to do a 40-hour job, and that is extremely tiring. So did I make it? Yes, I managed it. I worked for several companies for years as a developer. It can absolutely be done. Was it fun? No, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but it's something I did, and it's something I managed, and it is something that I still believe, particularly now, blind people can be equal citizens of, equal sort of people in the field of, compared to sighted people. If you practice hard enough, if you have your tools memorized backwards, if you know all the shortcuts and all the things, and if you're really familiar with the code base. That's a lot of ifs, but it can be done, and there's very few careers where I can say that that's true. I think the only career where you have a leg up as, particularly a blind person, is accessibility work or piano tuning if you have absolute hearing, a perfect pitch, which I unfortunately am one of those blind people that has that. So I get to brag about my musical prowess, even though I'm honestly not that much of a music player. I want to do more of it. I don't have time for it, but I do want to do it more. But yeah, I have that, superhuman, supposedly, ability to hear what notes being played when someone does it. And is that a superpower? I don't know. Is that gonna help me in life? It's gonna make me be snarky in life, and that's a good thing. But is it gonna help me in life? I don't know. Things are getting better in some respects. I think awareness is increasing. Unfortunately, also awareness that we shouldn't exist from a lot of parties that we will not mention in this stream. But the fact that we exist is becoming, I think, normalized in a sense, and I hope that the embarrassment of just how bad we've been doing over the last 50 years is gonna come next. Maybe before I die, that'd be nice. But accessibility is super complicated, and it can really be a matter of perspective. Like again, Steam I can use just fine. A lot of people still hate it. TryHackMe I can sometimes use. A lot of people still hate it. And that hate is justified. Let me be very clear about that. The hate about not being accessible, about being excluded, not being heard, is very understandable. And if anyone gives anybody else shit for doing that, let's just say I'm not gonna like you very much, because it's not nice to be on the other side of that. It's not nice to have to defend your right to use a random thing that someone made and always have to remind them that, hey, we exist and you didn't make it workable for us. That's a thing that really isn't fun to always be at the edge, always be at the sort of counterweight of, and that really is what you get bombarded as a disabled anything person. So that is not fun, and you're not being snarky or cute when like you give people shit for that. Like, and I'm not talking to people, developers or sighted people in general. I see blind people give blind people shit for accessibility questions. It's not cute. It's not, you're not better than everybody else if you can do something better than somebody else can. It's not great. And that was my attempt at a high note for this particular talk. We've been going for about 1.5 hours. Honestly, that is fine for this stream. That's really all I had for today. I have to go do other things, but I hope this was helpful to some people. I hope this was useful, and I hope it'll put some thoughts into people's heads. That's really what I meant to do. Like, having technical know-how can open doors. Having money can also open doors. Doesn't mean that everyone has those things, and I think it's good to keep that in mind. When you do accessibility work, when you do, when you decide how you do your UI, and when you do testing with people, it's important. Make sure that people, of all kinds actually test your stuff before you decide it's great for everyone, because it very well may not be. It's very possible that it's not great for a lot of people. And if the people then come to you and tell you that it's not great for them, please just listen to them. Don't get all butthurt. Tell them, okay, thanks for the feedback. We'll look into it. And for the love of actually look into it and don't just put it on the pile. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's really all I had. I need to go find a rating target. Is anyone of you lovely new people that are still here? I can't believe that you all are still here, but does anyone have someone that they figure would be great to raid into? I even see new people that were not here before. That is pretty cool. Love that. Does anyone have a friend, a colleague, someone who could use a pick-me-up that I could send a bunch of people to? If not, I'll have to find someone, but if not, that's fine. Let's see what I can find while people ruminate on that. Put some music on while we look for someone. There you go. I tend to not put on music a lot during these streams because it can distract people with autism and various other people that just don't want to hear multiple sources of audio. So when I'm actually talking about something important, I tend to turn the music off. But for something like this, I think it can be a nice little background. If it fucks with anyone, please let me know. The Laluca.
Just chat at the FR. Green circle. Speech mode off.
French. I don't think we speak French in this stream. Yeah, no one else is available. That sucks. What's this track called? Oh yeah, Symphony of a Lonely Sprite. Well, here's the Symphony of a Lonely Sprite. I hope you like it. It's a very over-the-top symphony. Yeah, no one seems to really be around currently. All of my usuals. Do I still have the thing open? I think I do. Hey, Justin. I was just about to call it off here. Did a whole entire talk about accessibility and why it's not as cut and dry as people would like to believe. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I did a bunch of presentation work today. I have a new hate and respect for PowerPoint. Let me tell you that. All right. Let me see. Who are we gonna bully? Is there anyone we can bully?
Speech mode talk. Speech mode off.
What? Wait, chat's a little behind. But you like the music. It's a Symphony of a Lonely Sprite by Adhesive Wombat, if you want to look it up on Spotify. Yes, that name is fantastic. Free when you're ready for a review or a presentation. I mean, there's not that much, honestly, right now. It's just very much a draft, and I don't intend to do that many slides, so you could review it, but there's really not that much to see. It's like a disclaimer. It's a title thing. There's an apply slide because I had to put that in, and there's like a thank you. So there's not that much in the slides. Just like this talk, I just gave a 1.5 hour talk about accessibility and how it's really complicated, and I just came up with it on the spot. So that's kind of usually how I do my talks. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. No, nothing yet. Nothing yet about the SF meeting. We'll have to see how that progresses as we go. You know, by chance, do you know anyone who's currently live that might want some folks over? Maybe use what? Yeah. Clips. Yeah. We are. We're gonna show some videos. We're gonna show some things. We're gonna show some brief like live demos that cannot break, like just a screen reader doing a certain thing. It's gonna be very life proof. I'm gonna make sure that nothing's gonna just fall over as we go. All right. Well, I think I'm just gonna call. Actually, let's go. You're just having this whole fun with this music. Let's go to our regular and then go talk to Kamari Sky. They make a bunch of cool music. We have some cool music going right now, so that's I think a good place to go to as we go. I'm just gonna raid out to them. Kamari Sky. Whoa.
Raid initiated. We will be raiding Kimareski in 90 seconds.
Yeah, tomorrow is going to be the Blind Game Jam on itch.io. We're going to cover that as Xerxiax. There's like 35 entries now. We had like 14 or 15 last time. So there is so much more to go through, and there's a lot of really high quality stuff in there as well. So I'm really curious to go through that. That's going to be tomorrow at 3 Eastern on the Xerxiax channel.
60 seconds remaining.
I'm going to try to get so much of the actual devs involved with that, because I am on the Discord and I can actually like sound the alarm and say we're doing this. So that'll be super cool. Saturday, hopefully more Diablo 4. Finish up the epilogue for that game. And then next Tuesday, heck, I don't know what we're doing next Tuesday. I might not even be here. We'll have to see. I got a bunch of stuff to do, so we'll see what we can rink out here. But that's what we're doing to today, tomorrow, and
30 seconds remaining.
Another 30 seconds telling me to have to speak fast or get out, and we're gonna get out here in just 20 seconds. Everyone have a fantastic day or night or in between. I don't know what time it is when you're watching this. If you don't have a fantastic day, you did enough. You did great. And, make the most of it regardless.
10 seconds remaining.
Have a good day. I'll see you all tomorrow if you're joining me for that. And otherwise, I'll see you next time. Have a good day.
Speech mode off.
Raid forwarded to Kimareski.
Fortnite. Joker. Nothing cracks like Mac.